On a cold, stormy winter night, amidst the relentless downpour, a trembling golden retriever lay in the heart of a desolate landfill. Her body bore the scars of cruel abuse, her golden coat drenched and matted with mud. Around her, 6 fragile puppies shivered in the freezing rain, their cries barely audible over the howling wind. This mother dog once knew the warmth of a home, the gentle touch of a loving hand. She was cherished, protected, but now abandoned, discarded like garbage. Why did this happen to her? Why were they left to face the unforgiving cold alone? Will they survive the night? And in this sea of despair, does God see them? The skies over Evergreen Hollow were heavy with rain, the kind of relentless downpour that soaked the world in despair. At the edge of a sprawling landfill, buried in filth and forgotten remnants, a golden retriever lay curled on the cold ground. Her once bright coat was matted with mud and blood, bearing the marks of betrayal and abuse. Around her, 6 tiny puppies squirmed and whimpered, their frail bodies shivering in the freezing winter night. The rain did nothing to cleanse the air thick with the stench of decay, nor did it soothe the trembling mother as she shielded her litter from the bitter cold. This was Daisy, a dog who had once known the warmth of a home, the joy of being loved. Now she clung to life not for herself, but for the 6 fragile lives depending on her. Despite her pain, despite the betrayal that had led her here, Daisy's instinct to protect her puppies burned fiercely. Her weary eyes scanned the desolate expanse for something, anything, that might keep her family alive. Just a year ago, Daisy's world had been so different. She had been the cherished companion of Serafina, Victor's wife, a woman who treated Daisy like a family member rather than just a pet. Their home was modest but filled with laughter and warmth. In the backyard, Daisy would run with boundless energy as Victor tossed a ball, and Serafina clapped her hands in delight. "Good girl, Daisy," Serafina would call out, her voice light and joyful. Daisy would return with the ball, tail wagging, and drop it triumphantly at Victor's feet. Her golden coat gleamed in the sunlight, her eyes full of life and love. Serafina often brushed Daisy's fur while humming softly, her gentle hands and calming presence making Daisy feel secure. Victor, too, had shared in this bond. He had been a different man back then, steady, kind, and devoted. For both Victor and Serafina, Daisy was more than a pet. She was a symbol of their love, a constant in their life together. But life has a cruel way of unraveling happiness. Serafina fell ill, and despite Victor's efforts to save her, the illness took her away within months. Her passing left a gaping void that Victor couldn't fill. Grief consumed him, turning his days into an endless haze of sorrow. The house, once filled with laughter, became silent. Daisy's attempts to comfort Victor, nudging his hand with her nose, resting her head on his lap, were met with indifference. She didn't understand why the man who had once scratched her ears with affection now avoided her gaze. Victor sought solace in alcohol. Days blurred into nights as he drowned his pain in bottles of whiskey and beer. Daisy's presence, once a comfort, became a painful reminder of Serafina's absence. Anger replaced his grief, and it didn't take long before that anger found a target. One stormy evening, Victor lashed out. Daisy, confused and frightened, yelped as his hand struck her. It wasn't the first time, but it was the hardest blow yet. She stumbled, her legs giving way, her body crumpling to the floor. Blood matted her golden fur, and her vision blurred as she lay there, stunned by the betrayal of the man she had trusted most. When Victor sobered up and saw what he had done, fear gripped him. He knew the consequences if anyone found out. In a panicked state, he made a heartless decision. Loading Daisy and her 6 newborn puppies into his old truck, he drove to the outskirts of Evergreen Hollow. The landfill loomed in the darkness, a sea of refuse and forgotten objects. Without hesitation, he opened the door and dumped them out, their small bodies barely making a sound as they hit the wet ground. Victor didn't look back. The truck's taillights disappeared into the rain, leaving Daisy and her puppies alone in the cold, unfeeling night. Daisy stirred, her body aching, her vision still clouded. She glanced around at her puppies, who were huddled together, their tiny cries breaking the silence of the landfill. Despite the pain coursing through her body, Daisy forced herself to stand. Her legs wobbled, but she steadied herself. Her puppies needed her. The rain pelted down, soaking her fur, but she pressed on. The towering piles of trash around her were treacherous, but she searched desperately for shelter. She found a small hollow beneath a sheet of discarded metal, just large enough to shield her puppies from the worst of the storm. Once they were tucked away, Daisy ventured back into the open, searching for food. The landfill was vast and cruel, filled with sharp edges and toxic smells. Her paws bled as she walked over broken glass and jagged debris, but she ignored the pain. Every scrap of food she found, a piece of stale bread, a discarded bone, she brought back to her puppies. The days that followed were relentless. The rain gave way to freezing winds, and the nights were long and unforgiving. Daisy grew weaker, but her resolve never wavered. Her puppies, oblivious to the harshness of their reality, found comfort in her warmth and care. Each night Daisy lay awake, her body curled around her litter, shielding them from the cold. Her once bright eyes were dull with exhaustion, but within them burned a quiet strength. She had been abandoned, betrayed, and broken, but she refused to give up. In the distance, the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the landfill. Daisy's ears perked up, her body tense. Was it danger or salvation? She didn't know, but she would face whatever came next with the same strength that had carried her this far. As the light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting the landfill in a pale golden glow, Daisy's heart swelled with a small, fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance for her and her puppies to find the love and safety they had lost. Noah was only 8 years old when his life was irreversibly changed. Just a few years ago, he had a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the boundless love of his parents. They lived in a small, cheerful house in the quiet town of Evergreen Hollow. His father was an electrician who loved tinkering with gadgets, often inviting Noah to help him fix broken appliances. His mother, a school librarian, nurtured his curiosity by encouraging his experiments and answering his endless questions about how things worked. Weekends were spent as a family, picnicking by the lake, building wooden contraptions in the garage, or simply playing board games on rainy days. Noah's favorite memory was the time they built a small go-kart together. It was clunky and noisy, but he and his father had laughed for hours as they raced it down the sloping driveway, his mother cheering from the sidelines. Then came the accident. One fateful evening, a car speeding through a red light collided with his parents' vehicle. Noah, staying at home with a babysitter that night, never got to say goodbye. In a single moment, he lost everything. The days that followed were a blur. Relatives debated who would take him in, and the looming possibility of being sent to an orphanage haunted him. In the end, it was his grandfather, Sam, who stepped forward. Sam, a retired war veteran, lived alone in a modest house on the outskirts of town. Though old and weary, he opened his doors and his heart to Noah, vowing to care for the boy as best as he could. For Sam, it wasn't an easy adjustment. He had spent decades living a quiet, solitary life, his days revolving around tending a small garden and repairing odds and ends around the house. But when Noah came to live with him, Sam found renewed purpose. He knew he couldn't replace Noah's parents, but he could give the boy stability and love. Noah, however, withdrew from the world. The once happy, curious boy became quiet and reserved, avoiding friends and activities he used to enjoy. At school, he kept to himself, sitting in the back of the class, barely speaking unless called upon. Teachers and classmates tried to reach out, but Noah pushed them away, unable to connect with anyone after his loss. Instead, he found solace in solitude. Sam noticed Noah often disappearing for hours into the backyard or the garage, tinkering with old appliances and broken electronics he found lying around. At first, Sam worried that Noah was retreating too much, but he quickly realized this was Noah's way of healing. "Grandpa," Noah had once said, holding up a crude flashlight he'd cobbled together from scraps, "I made this from an old battery and some wires I found." Sam's eyes filled with pride. "That's incredible, Noah. You've got quite the talent." From then on, Sam encouraged Noah's hobby. They often took trips to the local junkyard or the sprawling landfill outside town, hunting for old circuit boards, motors, and other discarded treasures. The landfill became Noah's refuge. While others saw it as a wasteland of trash, he saw endless possibilities. Piles of broken televisions, outdated computers, and discarded appliances were his playground. With a small backpack filled with tools and a flashlight tucked into his pocket, Noah would spend hours exploring, searching for parts to bring his ideas to life. Sam supported Noah's unconventional interest wholeheartedly. "You've got your dad's knack for fixing things," he often said, watching Noah work with precision and focus. To Sam, these moments were more than just hobbies. They were Noah's way of channeling his grief into something constructive, a way to keep his father's memory alive. One chilly morning, with the sky painted in hues of grey, Noah headed to the landfill as usual. Armed with gloves and a screwdriver, he navigated the labyrinth of trash, searching for anything that caught his eye. He had just unearthed the rusted remains of an old radio when a faint sound reached his ears. It was soft at first, almost drowned out by the distant hum of machinery, but it grew louder, a whimper. Noah froze, straining to locate the source. Moving cautiously, he climbed over a mound of broken furniture and discarded cardboard. There, amidst a pile of old tires, he saw it. A golden retriever, battered and frail, lay curled around 6 tiny puppies. The mother dog's golden coat was caked with mud and dried blood, her ribs visible beneath her thin frame. Her puppies, barely larger than his hand, huddled close to her for warmth, their small whimpers echoing in the cold air. Noah's breath caught in his throat. He had seen stray animals before, but this was different. The mother's eyes met his, and in that moment he saw something he couldn't ignore: pain, exhaustion, and a plea for help. Kneeling slowly, Noah reached out a hand. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice trembling. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The mother dog didn't move but watched him warily, her body trembling as she tried to shield her puppies. Noah's heart ached. He knew he couldn't leave them there, not in the freezing cold, not with no food or shelter. Carefully, he unzipped his backpack and pulled out a small blanket he always carried for sitting on cold ground. He draped it over the mother dog and her puppies, trying to offer them some warmth. "This won't be enough," he whispered, his mind racing. He looked around, realizing the enormity of what he was about to do. His grandfather's house was small, their resources limited, but he couldn't turn his back on these helpless creatures. With trembling hands, he scooped up 2 of the puppies and placed them in his backpack, making sure they had room to breathe. He wrapped the remaining 4 in his coat and gently lifted the mother dog into his arms. She whimpered softly but didn't resist. The walk back home was slow and arduous. The weight of the mother dog and her puppies strained his arms, but he refused to stop. Rain began to drizzle, soaking through his clothes, but he pressed on, driven by a determination he didn't fully understand. When he finally reached home, Sam opened the door, his eyes widening in shock at the sight of Noah, drenched and shivering, cradling the injured dog. "Noah, what?" "I couldn't leave them," Noah interrupted, his voice breaking. "I just couldn't." Sam's gaze softened as he took in the scene. Without another word, he grabbed towels and helped Noah dry off the mother dog and her puppies. They set up a small corner in the living room with blankets and bowls of water. The mother dog, whom Noah decided to call Daisy, curled protectively around her puppies, her eyes closing for the first time in what felt like days. Over the next few days, Noah and Sam worked tirelessly to care for Daisy and her puppies. They fed her small portions of food, cleaned her wounds, and made sure the puppies stayed warm. Despite the challenges, Noah felt something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. Daisy, in turn, seemed to sense the kindness in her young rescuer. She began to wag her tail faintly when Noah entered the room, and her puppies grew stronger under his care. For Noah, the landfill had always been a place of creation, a source of parts for his projects. But now, it had given him something far greater: a connection, a reason to hope, and a reminder that even in the most broken places, life could find a way to shine. Back at Sam and Noah's small, worn home, the living room had transformed into a sanctuary for Daisy and her 6 tiny puppies. The corner of the room was lined with old blankets and cushions, creating a warm and safe space for the exhausted dog family. Daisy, still weak and trembling, curled protectively around her puppies, her eyes darting nervously at every sound. The puppies, though small and frail, whimpered softly as they nestled close to their mother. For Noah and Sam, the task ahead was daunting. Daisy's wounds were raw, her trust shattered, and her puppies were too young and vulnerable to fend for themselves. But for Noah, who had already taken a monumental step in rescuing them, the thought of failure was unbearable. Sam knelt beside Daisy, his weathered hands steady as he examined her injuries under the dim glow of a table lamp. "She's been through hell," he muttered, his voice tinged with both anger and sorrow. He gestured for Noah to bring over the first aid kit. "We'll do what we can," Sam said, trying to reassure both himself and his grandson. Noah handed over clean rags and a bowl of warm water, watching as his grandfather gently cleaned Daisy's wounds. She flinched at first, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Noah knelt beside her, speaking softly. "It's okay, girl. We're here to help you," he whispered, his voice calm and soothing. Daisy's growl subsided into a whimper, her eyes fixed on Noah. She didn't trust him yet, but there was something in his voice, a patience, a kindness, that began to ease her fear. Sam applied a homemade salve to the cuts and abrasions on her body. They had no resources for a vet, so Sam relied on old remedies he'd learned during his years in the military. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. While Sam focused on Daisy, Noah turned his attention to the puppies. Their tiny bodies quivered with hunger, their small cries tugging at his heart. He rummaged through the kitchen for anything that could serve as a makeshift bottle. After some trial and error, he found an old plastic dropper and a carton of milk. "I hope this works," Noah said to himself as he filled the dropper and approached the puppies. One by one, he carefully fed them, their tiny mouths eagerly latching onto the dropper. Daisy watched warily, her body tense, but she didn't intervene. Noah's gentle demeanor seemed to reassure her. Over the next few days, feeding the puppies became a round-the-clock effort. Noah barely slept, waking every few hours to ensure they were fed and warm. Sam tried to help, but his aging body couldn't keep up with the demands of constant care. "You're doing good, Noah," Sam said one morning, watching his grandson cradle one of the puppies. "Your parents would be proud." Noah nodded silently, the weight of those words both comforting and bittersweet. For days, Daisy remained guarded. She ate sparingly, keeping her body curled tightly around her puppies. Any sudden movements from Noah or Sam made her flinch, her eyes filled with suspicion. Noah was patient. Each day he sat by her side, speaking softly while offering small scraps of food. He avoided eye contact, letting her approach on her own terms. "It's okay, girl," he'd say, holding out a piece of bread or a morsel of meat. "You're safe here." It took nearly a week, but one afternoon, Daisy finally stretched her neck forward and cautiously took a piece of food from Noah's hand. It was a small victory, but it filled Noah with hope. "Good girl," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Daisy's tail wagged faintly, a tiny flicker of trust that had been reignited. As the days turned into weeks, Daisy's wounds began to heal, and her trust in Noah and Sam grew. She allowed them to touch her without flinching, and her once guarded posture softened. Her puppies, now a bit stronger, began to explore their little corner of the living room, their playful antics bringing laughter to the house. For Noah, Daisy became more than just a dog. She was a companion, a source of comfort, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, healing was possible. One chilly evening, as the fire crackled in the hearth, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, stroking Daisy's golden fur. The puppies tumbled around him, nipping playfully at his sleeves. Sam watched from his chair, a rare smile on his face. "This house hasn't felt this alive in years," Sam said, his voice soft. Noah looked up, a faint smile playing on his lips. "It's because of her, Grandpa. She saved me as much as we saved her." Daisy's recovery didn't just bring warmth to the house, it brought purpose. Caring for her and her puppies gave Noah a sense of responsibility and a reason to look beyond his own pain. He spent hours crafting small toys for the puppies from bits of wire and scrapwood, delighting in their playful reactions. Sam, too, found solace in their presence. Though his body was frail, he found himself energized by the life that now filled his home. "They need us," he told Noah one day as they watched Daisy and her puppies nap by the fire. "And we need them." Noah nodded. For the first time since his parents' death, he felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that, despite everything, he could build something good out of the broken pieces of his life. As Daisy regained her strength, she began to follow Noah around the house, her tail wagging gently whenever he spoke to her. The puppies grew bolder, venturing out of their corner and exploring every nook and cranny of the small home. Their mischievous antics often brought laughter, breaking through the lingering shadows of grief. But Noah knew the journey wasn't over. Daisy and her puppies needed more than what their humble home could provide. Yet, for now, they had each other. And that was enough. In Daisy's eyes, Noah saw a reflection of his own struggle, the pain of loss, the fear of being abandoned, and the fragile hope for a better future. Together they were healing step by step, teaching each other that even in the harshest circumstances, love could prevail. In a dimly lit room, Victor sat slumped in his worn armchair, an empty bottle of whiskey lying at his feet. Rain pattered against the window, its relentless rhythm matching the turmoil in his heart. No amount of alcohol could drown the haunting images that played over and over in his mind. Daisy's frightened eyes, her broken body, the helpless cries of her puppies as he drove away that fateful night. Victor had thought leaving them at the landfill would erase his guilt, but it had done the opposite. The memory of their abandonment was now an unshakable shadow, a constant reminder of his cruelty. He had tried to convince himself that he had no choice, but deep down he knew the truth. Late one stormy night, unable to bear the weight of his guilt any longer, Victor made a decision. He grabbed his coat, shoved his feet into muddy boots, and stepped out into the rain. His old truck roared to life, its headlights cutting through the downpour as he drove toward the landfill. Victor's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he approached the sprawling wasteland on the outskirts of Evergreen Hollow. The thought of what he might find, or not find, filled him with dread. "What if they didn't make it?" he muttered under his breath. "What if I was too late?" When he arrived, the sight of the desolate landfill made his stomach churn. Towering mounds of garbage loomed in the darkness, illuminated by the truck's flickering headlights. Victor stepped out, his boots sinking into the muddy ground. He called out, his voice shaky. "Daisy! Daisy! Are you here?" The only response was the distant rustling of scavenging animals and the relentless rain. Undeterred, Victor searched for hours, climbing over piles of trash and peering into every crevice. The more he looked, the more his desperation grew. He replayed the moment he had left them, the puppy's tiny cries, Daisy's broken body lying in the rain, and it made him sick to his core. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Victor had to accept the painful reality: they were gone. He collapsed onto a broken pallet, burying his face in his hands. "I failed them," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I failed her." But Victor wasn't ready to give up. Over the next few days, he began asking questions around town. He spoke to workers at the landfill, wandered the streets, and even approached strangers, describing Daisy and her puppies. Most people dismissed him, some with pity and others with disdain. It wasn't until he stopped by the local hardware store that he got a lead. The shopkeeper, a kind-faced older man, listened patiently as Victor described Daisy. "I think I've heard about her," the man said thoughtfully. "There's a boy, Noah, who rescued a dog and her puppies from the landfill. He lives out on the edge of town with his grandpa." Victor's heart raced. He thanked the man and hurried back to his truck. He now had a name and a glimmer of hope. The drive to Noah's house was short, but it felt like an eternity. As Victor pulled up to the modest property, the sun was setting, casting the house in a warm, golden light. He hesitated before stepping out, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway. The house was small but inviting, with smoke curling from the chimney and a faint glow from the windows. Victor knocked on the door, his hands trembling. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a young boy with messy brown hair and wary green eyes. "Can I help you?" Noah asked, gripping the edge of the door. Victor cleared his throat, his voice rough. "I'm looking for a dog, a golden retriever. She had 6 puppies. Someone said you might know where they are." Noah's eyes narrowed. His posture stiffened, and a flicker of anger crossed his face. "Why do you want to know?" Sam, Noah's grandfather, appeared behind him, his weathered face etched with suspicion. "Who are you, and what's your business with the dog?" Victor hesitated, then sighed deeply. "My name's Victor. That dog, her name's Daisy. She used to be mine. I did something terrible. I need to make it right." Noah's jaw tightened. "You abandoned her, didn't you?" he said, his voice sharp with accusation. "You left her and her puppies to die." Victor lowered his head, his voice trembling. "You're right, I did. I was drunk and angry, and I made the worst mistake of my life. But I can't live with what I've done. Please, I just need to see her, to know she's okay." The tension hung heavy in the air. Noah's grip on the door tightened, but Sam placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let him in," Sam said quietly. Victor stepped into the house cautiously, his eyes scanning the room. In the corner, Daisy lay curled around her puppies, her golden fur glowing softly in the firelight. At the sight of Victor, her ears flattened and a low growl rumbled in her throat. Victor froze, his chest tightening. "Daisy," he murmured. Noah knelt beside her, stroking her back reassuringly. "It's okay, girl. He's not going to hurt you." Victor dropped to his knees, keeping his distance. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to see you, to know you're safe." Sam gestured for Victor to sit, his stern expression softening slightly. "You should hear what happened after you left her," he said. Noah recounted the night he found Daisy and her puppies in the landfill, the rain, the cold, and the desperate state they were in. He described how he and Sam worked tirelessly to care for them, earning Daisy's trust and helping her heal. Victor listened in silence, his guilt deepening with every word. When Noah finished, Victor took a shaky breath. "You saved her," he said quietly. "You saved all of them. I don't know how to thank you." Noah crossed his arms. "We didn't do it for you. We did it for her." Victor nodded, understanding the boy's anger. "You're right. I don't deserve your kindness, but I want to help. I know I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can make up for it." Sam studied Victor for a long moment before speaking. "If you're serious about making amends, it's going to take more than just words. You'll have to prove it." Victor met his gaze, determination in his eyes. "I will, whatever it takes." As the evening wore on, the tension eased slightly. Daisy, though still wary, seemed to relax under Noah's gentle care. Victor stayed for a while, watching the puppies play and tumble over each other. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to make things right. When Victor left that night, it was with a promise, to himself, to Noah, and to Daisy, that he would do better. The road to redemption wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to take the first step. Evergreen Hollow was a small town where everyone's life seemed to intertwine. It was the kind of place where even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple through the community, touching hearts far beyond the initial gesture. In this close-knit town, Noah and his grandfather Sam had always lived quietly, but their rescue of Daisy and her 6 puppies would soon bring a wave of change they never expected. Mrs. Carter, a spirited woman in her mid-40s, had lived in Evergreen Hollow her entire life. She was known for her warm smile and her knack for bringing people together, whether through organizing bake sales or helping with the annual town fair. She lived just down the street from Sam and Noah and had always had a soft spot for the boy. On a crisp afternoon, Mrs. Carter decided to visit Sam and Noah with a fresh loaf of banana bread in hand. She had noticed Noah spending more time at home recently and wanted to check in. When Sam opened the door and invited her inside, she was immediately drawn to the scene in their living room. Daisy, the golden retriever, lay curled on a blanket with her 6 tiny puppies nestled against her. Noah sat beside them, carefully feeding one of the pups with a makeshift dropper. The sight stopped Mrs. Carter in her tracks. "Noah," she said, her voice soft with admiration. "What have you done here?" Noah looked up, his cheeks reddening slightly. "I found them at the landfill. They were hurt and cold. I couldn't just leave them." Mrs. Carter knelt to get a closer look, her heart swelling as she gently stroked Daisy's head. "You saved them," she murmured. "That's incredible." The compassion in Noah's actions moved Mrs. Carter deeply. As she left their house that day, she couldn't stop thinking about the boy's selflessness. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop, the post that changed everything. Mrs. Carter began typing on Evergreen Hollow's community social media page. "I want to share an incredible story about one of our own. Noah, a 12-year-old boy in our town, recently rescued an injured golden retriever and her 6 puppies from the landfill. Despite his own challenges, Noah and his grandfather have been nursing them back to health with so much love and care. This boy's heart is as big as his actions. Let's come together to support him and these precious animals." She added a photo she had taken of Daisy lying protectively with her puppies and Noah sitting nearby. With a deep breath, she clicked post. She hoped a few neighbors might respond, maybe offering food or supplies. She had no idea that her post would spark something far greater. By morning, Mrs. Carter's post had gone viral within the community. Likes, comments, and shares flooded in, each one filled with admiration and offers to help. "Such a kind boy. How can I donate food or supplies?" one comment read. Another said, "I have a few extra blankets I can bring over." Local businesses quickly joined in. The pet store offered free food and toys for Daisy and her puppies. The town's veterinary clinic volunteered to provide medical care. Neighbors began dropping off donations of blankets, medicine, and even hand-knitted dog sweaters. Noah and Sam were overwhelmed by the sudden outpouring of support. Each day, their front porch filled with new supplies and kind notes from strangers who were touched by Noah's story. As the story spread, Noah and Daisy became local heroes. People began referring to Daisy as the Dog of Hope, a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. Noah, who had always been a quiet and private boy, now found himself in the spotlight. One evening, a reporter from the town's newspaper knocked on their door. "I'd love to write about what you've done," she said, notepad in hand. Noah hesitated, unsure about the attention, but Sam gently encouraged him. During the interview, Noah explained how he had found Daisy and her puppies and how helping them had given him a renewed sense of purpose. "It wasn't just about saving her," Noah said, his voice steady but soft. She's helped me too. She gave me something to care about when I felt lost." The story was published the next day, complete with a photo of Noah sitting with Daisy and her puppies. It quickly became a sensation in Evergreen Hollow, inspiring even more people to reach out. With the community's help, life for Noah and Sam began to improve. The donations meant they no longer had to stretch their limited resources to care for Daisy and her puppies. A local handyman even repaired their leaky roof for free, ensuring the house would stay warm and dry through the winter. For Noah, the experience brought more than just material support. It gave him a sense of connection. People who had once been strangers now stopped to chat, asking about Daisy and her puppies. He began to feel less isolated and more a part of the community. Sam, too, found a renewed energy. Watching the kindness of their neighbors and the joy that Daisy brought to their home reminded him that there was still good in the world. To celebrate Noah's act of kindness, the town held a gathering in the park. Families brought their pets, children played games, and the mayor gave a short speech about the importance of compassion and community. When Noah was asked to speak, he felt nervous but stepped up to the microphone. "I didn't do this to be a hero," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I just saw someone who needed help, and I couldn't walk away. I'm grateful to all of you for helping Daisy and her puppies." The crowd erupted in applause, and Daisy barked happily from where she sat beside him. As the puppies grew stronger, neighbors lined up to adopt them, ensuring each one found a loving home. Daisy remained with Noah, her loyalty to him unshakable. She had gone from being a victim of cruelty to a symbol of hope, embodying the resilience that Noah had shown in saving her. For Evergreen Hollow, the story of Noah and Daisy became a cherished reminder of the power of compassion. For Noah, it was a turning point, a moment when his life, once defined by loss, became a source of inspiration and joy for others. And for Daisy, it was a second chance, proving that even in the darkest places, kindness could light the way. The haunting guilt that had consumed Victor for weeks now carried a flicker of hope. After seeing Daisy safe and loved in Noah's care, Victor was determined to change. He couldn't undo the past, but he could make amends, not just for Daisy, but for himself. Victor's first visit to Sam and Noah's house had been a turning point, but it was only the beginning. One evening, as they sat around the living room with Daisy and her puppies, Sam leaned forward, his weathered face serious but kind. "If you're serious about making things right," Sam said, "it starts with you, Victor. You need to fix yourself before you can help anyone else." Victor nodded. He had spent too long drowning his pain in alcohol, using it as a crutch to avoid the grief of losing his wife, Serafina. He knew now that he needed to confront that pain, not run from it. The very next day, with Sam's support, Victor enrolled in a local rehabilitation program. The decision wasn't easy, and the road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose. Rehabilitation was a humbling experience. Victor attended group meetings where he listened to others share their stories of addiction and recovery. At first, he struggled to open up, but over time, he found himself sharing his own story, how grief had consumed him, how he had hurt Daisy, and how the guilt had driven him to change. The support he received from the group was overwhelming. For the first time, Victor realized he wasn't alone in his struggles. "I can't undo what I've done," he said during one session, his voice trembling. "But I want to be better. I need to be better, for Daisy, for myself, and for the people I've hurt." Each day in the program was a small victory. Victor began to regain control of his life, one step at a time. During his rehabilitation, Victor learned about the town's animal rescue organization. Run by a dedicated group of volunteers, the shelter worked tirelessly to care for abandoned and abused animals. Inspired by Daisy's story and his own journey, Victor decided to get involved. At first, his role was simple: cleaning kennels, preparing food, and walking the dogs. But as he spent more time at the shelter, he realized how much he enjoyed being around the animals. They didn't judge him for his past. They simply responded to the care and kindness he offered. Over time, Victor became a valued member of the team. He worked with dogs that were shy, scared, or aggressive, using patience and gentleness to help them trust again. Each small breakthrough, a wagging tail, a timid dog taking its first step toward him, was a reminder of Daisy's resilience and his own capacity for change. Victor also began visiting Noah and Sam regularly. At first, Noah was hesitant to welcome him back into their lives. He still remembered the man who had abandoned Daisy, and trust was not easily earned. But Victor was persistent. He brought toys and treats for Daisy and her puppies, spending hours playing with them in Sam's backyard. He helped Noah repair some of his electronics, showing him how to use discarded parts more efficiently. Slowly but surely, Noah began to see that Victor was a different man. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Noah finally spoke the words Victor had longed to hear. "You're not the same person who hurt Daisy," he said quietly. "I can see that now." Victor's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you, Noah. That means more than you know." Word of Victor's transformation spread through Evergreen Hollow. The man who had once been a source of whispers and judgment was now seen volunteering at the animal shelter, mentoring other recovering addicts and rebuilding connections with his neighbors. Mrs. Carter, who had been wary of Victor, approached him one afternoon while dropping off supplies at the shelter. "I heard about the work you've been doing," she said, her tone softer than he expected. "It takes courage to turn your life around like this." Victor smiled faintly. "I'm just trying to make things right." The community's acceptance wasn't immediate, but it was genuine. Over time, people began to greet Victor warmly on the streets, their smiles a reflection of the trust he had worked so hard to rebuild. Daisy, too, began to accept Victor's presence. During his visits, she no longer growled or flinched when he approached. Instead, she wagged her tail cautiously, her eyes softening with recognition. One afternoon, as Victor sat on the porch with Noah, Daisy surprised them both by walking over and resting her head on Victor's knee. He froze, his breath catching. "She forgives you," Noah said, smiling. Victor gently stroked Daisy's golden fur, tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you, girl," he whispered, "for giving me a second chance." Victor's journey wasn't without its challenges. There were moments of doubt and setbacks along the way, but he faced them with determination. His work at the shelter became a cornerstone of his recovery, and his visits with Noah and Daisy reminded him of the importance of love and forgiveness. As months turned into a year, Victor stood as a testament to the power of redemption. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, and that made all the difference. In the end, Victor's transformation wasn't just about making amends for his past. It was about finding a new purpose, a way to honor Serafina's memory, and a chance to be the man she would have been proud of. And for the first time in years, Victor felt at peace. The morning sun cast its gentle rays over Evergreen Hollow, touching every corner of the small town with a golden warmth. In the modest home of Noah and Sam, life was filled with a renewed sense of peace and purpose. Daisy, now fully recovered, lay curled on the rug, her golden coat gleaming. The puppies were gone, each finding a loving home, but Daisy remained, a loyal companion and a constant reminder of the power of compassion. The once fragile dog had become a symbol of hope for the town, her resilience inspiring everyone she met. For Noah, Daisy was more than a pet. She was a friend, a source of strength, and a living testament to the power of second chances. Victor's visits had become a cherished routine. He often stopped by to sit with Sam on the porch or play fetch with Daisy and Noah in the yard. His transformation from a broken man, consumed by guilt, to a compassionate member of the community was nothing short of remarkable. One sunny afternoon, as Victor watched Daisy bound across the yard, he turned to Sam. "I'll never be able to thank you and Noah enough for giving me a chance to make things right," he said quietly. Sam nodded, his weathered face softening. "It's not about the past, Victor. It's about what you're doing now, and what you're doing, it matters." Victor smiled, watching as Daisy nuzzled Noah's hand. "She saved me as much as she saved him," he said, "and for that, I'll always be grateful." The story of Daisy and her puppies had not only transformed Noah and Sam's lives, but had brought the community of Evergreen Hollow closer together. The outpouring of support from neighbors had strengthened bonds and reminded everyone of the importance of kindness. Noah, once shy and withdrawn, now found himself at the heart of his community. People who had been strangers became friends, drawn to his quiet strength and compassion. Sam, too, found a renewed sense of purpose, energized by the kindness that surrounded their family. As the seasons changed, so did the lives of everyone touched by Daisy's story. From the landfill to a loving home, Daisy's journey was a testament to resilience and the transformative power of love. For Noah and Sam, she was a light in their lives, bringing joy and meaning they hadn't known since the loss of Noah's parents. One evening, as the first snow of winter began to fall, Noah and Sam sat together by the fire. Daisy lay curled up beside them, her golden fur glowing in the firelight. Sam broke the comfortable silence. "You know, Noah, this whole journey, it's proof that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for something good to come out of it." Noah nodded, stroking Daisy's head. "I think Daisy was meant to find us, Grandpa. She didn't just need us. We needed her too." Sam smiled, his eyes shining with quiet wisdom. "Maybe that's how it works. God has a way of leading us to what we need, even if it doesn't always make sense at first." Noah looked down at Daisy, her tail thumping softly against the rug. "I think you're right," he said quietly. Daisy's journey is a reminder of the power of compassion and the difference it can make in the lives of animals and people alike. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on how you can bring light to someone's life, whether it's adopting a shelter pet, lending a hand to a neighbor in need, or simply spreading kindness in your own community. Let's continue to share stories of love and hope, inspiring others to believe in second chances. Comment below with your thoughts or share a story of compassion that has impacted your life. And don't forget to share this story with your friends and family, spreading the message that every act of kindness, big or small, can change the world. May God bless you, and may Daisy's journey remind us all to look for the light in every shadow.